Buongiorno a tutti. Good morning to everyone. And thank you, Reverend Chairwoman, for your... I think she deserves that, no, Reverend Chairwoman. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you to Dr. Matsiguerra for your presentation. My task is to provide a meditation. Yeah. So this is not a strictly scientific presentation. And I'm giving you the opportunity also to sleep if you want to, to rest in the Lord, the meditation. I was told to offer some insights based on experience on the lessons of the pandemic and the role of the social doctrine of the church in the path of evangelization. So I will speak to you based on my pastoral experience, contact with people, and also my reading of the social doctrines of the church in relation to the situations we have been facing due to the pandemic. The first point that I would like to share is since the outbreak of this pandemic up to today, we still continue to experience some sort of fluidity in the presentation of the origin and the nature of this virus. Although this year, I think there has been some progress in some of these questions. We still hear not only diverse, but sometimes even contradicting views among experts about how this pandemic started, how it spread, and how it should be addressed. So if you have two virologists appearing on television saying two contradictory things, we poor mortals, and what do you do? What do you do? You're not an expert. And then there are negationists and proponents of conspiracy theories. But we have testimonies of patients, families who grieve, persons who attend to the patients in hospitals and nursing homes. We know people who have lost their jobs, their homes, and even their dreams. But people still deny that there is a pandemic. I tested positive last year, and I'm grateful that I have remained asymptomatic, but I have cousins who have died. And you bury them even through online celebration. So when I hear people denying the existence of this, I said, how many grieving mothers do you want to listen to? No. The pandemic has been highly politicized in some sectors, in the narrow partisan sense of the word politics or politicize, as though the virus is a tool for partisanship and mutual demolition rather than for the common good and the common action. So we have politicians talking like scientists and making science more a matter of politics rather than science. And we mortals, listening to them, we are all the more confused. It's a pandemic of confusion. So that's my first point. And some of you were nodding your head and laughing, so probably I said something true. The second point in my meditation: what has the pandemic exposed? No. What has it revealed? And again, uh, I want to share with you what we as pastors have observed. First, the word pandemic. We are used to having emergency situations. I come from the Philippines. We have an average of 20 to 22 typhoons a year. Then you can add earthquakes, and other human-caused disasters. But when there is a typhoon, the emergency situation is often localized. You know the place where the typhoon hit, and where the destruction happened, and where the emergency response must take place. A pandemic is a general emergency. It is an emergency that affects all peoples and all nations. And it needed a pandemic to remind us of the interconnectedness of human beings with each other, across oceans and hills and rivers and mountains, and our interconnectedness with creation. As have been indicated by our previous speakers, the social teachings of the church have already said this for the past 30 years, but a pandemic, a virus, gave a face to this interconnectedness. We are really interconnected. The pandemic has exposed problems and deficiencies that have been in existence, for many years, but have been largely ignored. I would just like to share some of my own confusion and perplexities. For example, we woke up during the pandemic to a severe lack of health facilities, medicines, and trained personnel, and vaccines now in some parts of the world, where in some parts of the world they could vaccinate the whole population 4 times over. You have some countries that have barely touched 0.5% of their population. During the pandemic, you hear a lot of reminders: wash your hands frequently. And some even say, while washing your hands, sing the happy birthday, tanti auguri. That's that's the length of time that you need to wash your hands. But I say, do you realize some communities don't have water? They don't have drinking water. Where will they get water to wash their hands? I know it is a good proposal, but if you live in a community without water, it sounds like an insult. Observe social distancing. Say that to people living in the slums. Stay home. Say that to the homeless. Lock yourself up in your room. Thanks be to God, you have a house with rooms. But there are many people whose house, in quotation marks, is made up of plastic and trash that they pin together. Online work and study. But many parts of the world don't have Wi-Fi connection. And so they are more disconnected with the rest of the world. And the available online connection is often used for spreading fake and hate messages, further dividing a world that needs to work together because it is a pandemic. The budget allocation, all the endless debates on how much resource should be set aside for medicine, housing, etc. But as the debates are going on, weapons of war are able to cross boundaries unchecked. And you have all the testing, the nuclear testing that's happening. And now tourism to outer space. Now, where does the money go? The pandemic has exposed this lack of real prioritization, or maybe that is the priority. And that makes us sad that is the priority. We also realize that parents who have to guide their children in their schoolwork at home, and the educators who have to teach online, and some institutions were not prepared and not formed for alternative modes of teaching. The fragility of the human psyche in facing disruptions of routine and solitude, so frail. The fragility has come to our attention. We think that even our young people are omnipotent. Don't mind me. I'll do it my way. With a pandemic, we see that all this omnipotence is just an illusion. Just an illusion. Not only among the young, but among us who are not young anymore. Self-preservation, coupled with populism, has led to fear, the fear of others. We're afraid not only of the virus, we're afraid of the others. The pandemic has made us more fearful of others, and the victims, the first victims there are the migrants, those who are in the so-called minority groups, the others. Unfortunately, the pandemic also became an opportunity for corruption to thrive. As people were told to stay home, get isolated, then there was a lot of room for corrupt people to continue their business. But during the lockdown, the air, the atmosphere in many big cities suddenly became pure. You wanted to go out and remove your mask because finally there's clean air. And from a distance you could see, the skyline, which before the pandemic was clouded with smog. So it just reminded us that when people stop using what we call as signs of progress, creation takes a good rest and becomes healthier. Let me end there. But the pandemic has also surfaced many good and noble things, like families rediscovering each other in this period of being together. I know some husbands saying, it's was like getting to know my wife for the first time again after 20 years. No. And I hope they decide to renew their marriage vows rather than say, let me look for somebody else. But what a beautiful experience. And parents getting to know their children once again. And parents who now guide their children in the schoolwork, realizing how difficult the work of teachers are. So they start appreciating the ministry, the mission of teachers. Imagine mothers and fathers guiding only 2 children, no? And they are about to have a heart attack already. And the teachers in school handle 30 of them for 8 hours. No? And so the teachers were given a boost. The fragility and the vulnerability of human existence, has led others to engage in little acts of kindness and generosity. I know some people say, life is short. I don't know if I will contract the virus today, tomorrow. Let me do something good and noble now. So I'm still part of Caritas Internationalis. We've seen during this pandemic an increase also in volunteers, in Caritas programs, in health facilities, young people volunteering to sing a song to the elderly in the nursing homes, young people who organized a mini concert on the road, to uplift the spirits of the elderly. And the counselors, the psychologists, psychiatrists who offer their assistance to the emotionally and psychologically distressed without pay and without prior appointment. I'm also part of the Catholic Biblical Federation. I'm not a biblical scholar, but so I don't know why I'm there. But during the pandemic, there was a dramatic increase in requests for online Bible formation, especially among parents. I said, could you help us guide our children in reading the Bible and studying the Bible? No, young people organize prayer services, healing services, prayer for the sick, and reflections to boost the spirits of the frontliners, the doctors, and the nurses. In Caritas, I know we have a lot of programs to build resilient communities, especially in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. And the call of many concerned groups for the remission or the forgiveness of national debts so that the money could be better used for addressing the consequences of the pandemic. And the call for equitable access to vaccines, to medicines, food, and water. So many of these good things also surfaced, saying that, well, with the eyes of faith and hope, crisis situations could be a fertile ground for the growth in humanity and solidarity. Now, I hear people saying, we hope to return to normal life. And my answer is, what normal life? Please describe that normal life that you want to return to. What are the norms of that life that we want to construct? Do we want just to go back to the all the aspects of life before the pandemic? Is that normal? Are all the aspects of that life normal? What can we learn from the pandemic? And how do we rediscover the norms? And in our case, is the social doctrine of the church. You know? I remember Noah in Genesis 6. I think he was the first one, and he and his family were the first ones to experience a lockdown. Yeah. But what was the purpose of the lockdown? It's not to destroy. So after that, God, through Noah, could recreate the world. The pandemic and its lockdowns or lock-in, I don't know, should be used for a recreation, a regeneration. Without that, there will be more arcs to build. Or in the Acts of the Apostles, the early disciples, the apostles, locked themselves in the upper room out of fear. But then the Holy Spirit blew mightily and opened the doors, opened their hearts, and they were told to go to the ends of the earth. A recreation. The social doctrine of the church is a gift, not only to the church, but to the world. Let us share the doctrines of the church, no? And let us not be afraid or ashamed to share that valuable teaching. Of course, the doctrines of the church calls us to conversion, individual and institutional conversion, conversion in lifestyle. And may I suggest that we approach also the social teachings of the church through narrative, through stories of men and women. Most of them probably will not land on the front pages of newspapers, but who live and who serve and who care for others, clearly because of or inspired by the social teachings of the church. Like what? They've already been mentioned, and I end with this. The interconnectedness of human beings with each other and creation. Living this universal solidarity and what Pope Francis calls social friendship, but mainly through personal contact, personal encounters, meet people where they are, and build solidarity one by one. Every encounter is already a big step in building solidarity. The second is the call for us to be persons for others. To be persons for others, pro-existence. And to make this a habit so that it becomes a culture of being, of living for others. And we hope that our institution should also be for others, with special attention to the poor, the neglected, the abandoned, those who are considered non-persons. Related to that is the search for the common good and the universal access to the goods of the earth and the work of human labor. And in this particular time, access to medicines, water, food. We should prepare for, I guess, it's not just the vaccines that are missing in some countries, food also, hunger. I think we have a representative from the FAO, so they could give more data regarding this. Stewardship. We are not owners. We are guardians. We are stewards. Owners become proud. And owners dispose of things according to their will. But the guardian will care and be responsible. How do we teach the young people how to be stewards rather than owners. No? When I was much younger, it was accepted practice that the clothes of the elder children were handed down to us and nobody complained. Hmm? Hmm. So an elder son was a steward of his clothes, would have to take care of those clothes because that would be handed on to them. Now each one is the owner. And finally, compassion and hope. A dialogue of compassion, a dialogue of hope. The way Jesus dealt with the sick, the outsiders, the sinners, offering compassion and hope and making them realize they are truly brothers and sisters. So thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much.